Vernon Hall, Chapter 19. An Unexpected Ending. It all seemed like a horrible dream, but alas, it was no dream. It was all very real. I awoke in Vernon Hall and saw Bertha and Gareth both bending over me, their hands clasped in prayer. Bertha embraced me as I opened my eyes, and Gareth sighed in relief. A few moments later, Pastor Franklin informed me the police had sent out boats to search for Ezekiel's body, but it was nowhere to be found. They assumed he had drowned. My senses and my emotions were benumbed. I was devastated from all the awful revelations. I was still wearing the white gown. This was to be my wedding night, and here I was, shattered and heartbroken. I had had my share of grief and loss, but deceit was the worst of all my anguishes. I wondered whether Ezekiel had spoken the truth when he had said he loved me, or was I merely another Scarlet? This excruciating question would perturb me for years to come. What he had done to Scarlet was indeed unforgivable, but it wasn't deliberate. I wondered if Ezekiel had changed during the years he was away from England. Perhaps he hadn't recovered from a psychological malady. Or perhaps it was the evil ghost of Ezekiel Marlowe Lloyd who had made him commit those deeds. Gareth interrupted my mournful thoughts. Shall we go back to the very beginning, Eleanor? Shall we finally bury Miss Vernon? Indeed, Gareth was right. It was time to lay Amelia to rest. It was now time for her salvation, and mine. It was time to say goodbye to the past. Pastor Franklin informed me of the difficulties of finding an empty grave in the local cemetery during the night, and he suggested we bury Amelia's casket in the gardens of Vernon Hall that very evening. Gareth and Pastor Franklin carried her casket from that dreadful dungeon where I had spent months by her side. Before I departed that dungeon forever, I smashed the demonic stained glass window with my lantern. It was finally gone. The dungeon floor glistened with shards of that venomous serpent. As for Ezekiel Marlowe Lloyd's journal and the other Latin manuscripts in the treasure chest, I took them all to the Italian garden and burned them. Before Amelia's casket was buried in the garden, I glanced at her face. Lo and behold, there was a glow upon her cheeks and a delicate smile on her lips. I had thought myself delusional all along, but Gareth verified my observation. He too thought she was at peace. It was a painful farewell. Seeing the cascade descend into a deep, dark grave made me shudder and cry. This was the moment I had dreaded, the moment I had to let her go. But the subtle smile on her lips reassured me that her soul was now free. She had been in limbo in that dungeon. A proper grave was her rightful resting place, as it would be mine when my time came. As there was no tombstone, Gareth made a wooden cross and erected it before the grave. I stood silently for a few moments and prayed beside it. Pastor Franklin patted my arm benevolently. Do you really wish to continue living here at Vernon Hall, Eleanor, after everything that has happened? Amelia was gone. Ezekiel was gone. All that remained at Vernon Hall were the haunting memories of Amelia's embalmment, the diabolical ghosts of the monks, and Scarlet. I suddenly remembered her malicious warning. I am here. I have always been here. I was here before you, and I will be here after you. Did I really want to continue living in a house that had seen so much devastation? I shook my head and requested the pastor to arrange for alternate lodging somewhere in town. I have a better idea, my dear. Would you like to stay with my sister Maud and her husband in London? I couldn't believe my ears. For 18 years, I had only known the lonely and desolate town of Whitstable. I had always dreamt of greater things. London. I embraced Pastor Franklin. Thank you for everything you've done for me, Pastor Franklin. And I apologize for everything I've done wrong. The kind old pastor waved his hands and reminded me that he loved me like a daughter. I told Pastor Franklin the truth about what had happened to Hugo, and Bertha affirmed the same. After listening to our testimonies, Pastor Franklin reiterated what we already knew, that Hugo got what he deserved, and that it was all in the past. Bertha and I were sent to London the following day. It was another dream come true. My first dream had been to live at Vernon Hall, and I had been granted that. There were disappointments, heartbreak, and what not, but my time at Vernon Hall had been beautiful, and it had given me some of the most bittersweet of memories. I had always wondered whether Whitstable would stifle me to death, or whether I'd ever be able to explore the rest of the world. Well, my prayers had been answered. London was such a contrast to Whitstable with its busy markets and iconic buildings such as the Houses of Parliament, Big Ben, places I had only read about. I travelled in the London Underground, an absolute marvel of an era. Aunt Maud and her husband were the noblest of people. I was indebted to Pastor Franklin. He had been the sincerest and most magnanimous of all people I had ever known. Amelia was right about him, and I discovered she was right about Gareth too. Aunt Maud's husband owned a small vintage bookshop, and he asked me to help him there every day. My life was comfortable and peaceful, and I was surrounded by loving people. Gareth visited me from time to time, and on each occasion that I met him, my perception of him altered. He had stood by me during my hardships, and he had tolerated my temperaments, my recklessness, and of course my rejection of him. Had it not been for Gareth, I would have married Ezekiel, and who knows how my life would have ended then. I began to develop a deep sense of admiration and respect for Gareth, and I do confess, I eventually came to love him. It had been difficult to forget Ezekiel, but it was an affair predicated on lies, not knowing what his true motives were. Whether Ezekiel loved me or not, he was dishonest and troubled. Gareth was his complete opposite. He helped his father at the church, and a few years later took up a teaching position at a church school in London, near Aunt Maud's home. Life had changed for all of us over the years. Bertha had been my most trusted and beloved companion all along. She eventually fell in love with the valet at Aunt Maud's residence, and they married. Upon my 20th birthday, I received the £500 left by my guardian angel, and I shared £200 with Bertha. She was euphoric and started a new life with her husband in the Lake District. I was now all alone and a little forlorn. Everything beautiful in my life had been ephemeral, but that was about to change. It was Christmas Eve, and I had finished helping Aunt Maud decorate the Christmas tree. Her drawing room looked enchanting with the warm hearth blazing and several presents wrapped in glimmering paper beneath the Christmas tree. This is what I had missed my entire life: a warm family. Gareth and Pastor Franklin joined us too. I was delighted to see them. Eleanor, I need to say something to you, something very important. Walk with me. Gareth said very seriously, and for a moment I was distressed. What was so important that it had to be discussed on Christmas Eve? We walked to the far corner of the room, and I looked at Gareth perplexedly. He bore a grave expression. Then his somber mew grew into a warm smile. His cheeks glowed, and he knelt in front of me, holding a small box in his hand containing a delicate silver ring. I couldn't believe my eyes. I glanced around the room and saw Pastor Franklin, Aunt Maud, and her husband all beaming with joy. It was as if this blissful moment had been pre planned by all. Eleanor, I have been in love with you since the moment Father first introduced you to me. I know I'm clumsy at expressing myself. I thought this day would never come. And in truth, I don't even know what your answer will be. I'm a simple teacher and nothing more. I cannot promise the world to you, but I do promise to love you till death do us part. Will you accept a simple man like me as your husband? His green eyes sparkled, and my heart leapt with joy. I exclaimed, Yes, yes, I will, several times, and the pastor, Aunt Maud, and her husband all clapped and cheered in unison and raised their glasses. Gareth blushed profusely. He coyly put the silver ring on my finger. I pointed to the mistletoe that hung above us, but he was too coy to kiss me. His chubby cheeks grew rosier, so I placed a peck on his cheek. We all celebrated the night away with laughter, opening of presents, wedding plans, and a grand Christmas dinner that Aunt Maud had prepared, which included a whole roasted turkey with potatoes and Christmas pudding for dessert. It was beyond a doubt the happiest moment of my life. Some weeks later, I was married to Gareth in a church at Hampstead. It was indeed a fairy tale ceremony. I finally wore a white wedding dress with a veil and walked down the aisle with Aunt Maud's husband holding my arm. I missed Father and dear Amelia vehemently, but I believe they watched me from heaven and smiled. I was delighted to see Bertha with her husband, and was somewhat bewildered and happy to see Mr. Bartholomew as well. Old faces and new memories. I could barely contain my emotions. Bertha wept and embraced me warmly. These are tears of joy, miss. I am so happy for you and Mr. Gareth, she cried. Gareth and I moved to a small cottage near Hampstead Heath, and we lived a comfortable and peaceful life, one filled with love and respect. A year or so later, you were born, my dear Christine. My life truly had changed, and for once everything beautiful remained for years to come. A loving husband and a wonderful daughter were always by my side. You are probably wondering why I kept all this from you for all these years. I was frightened, my dear child. But I know now that you are a brave woman. You have faced so much, and it is time for you to face your mother's past and to know who I really am. For I was not always the sensible and stable woman you have known me to be. I was a different person at Vernon Hall. But whatever I was and whatever I did it in the name of love. Oh, Christine, I never had the strength to return to Vernon Hall, lest I should encounter Scarlet's ghost again. But I want you to return after my death and to pray beside Amelia's grave. I miss her, Christine. She has been alone all these years. Go to her. And no matter what you see there, just remember, love conquers all. With love and affection, your mother.